What's going on, everyone? I hope you're having a fantastic weekend, and I think this week's going to be a great one for the market. We have a whole lot to talk about today. The stock market is having one of its strongest increases since 1972. The Super Bowl this year is set to be the biggest yet in terms of sports betting, which can be some very good news for some of these sports betting stocks. On top of that, we have Jeff Bezos dumping $2 billion worth of his shares. We have more earnings on the way, and we have key inflation data to cover. All while the S&P 500 just broke above the crucial 5,000 mark. So we have a lot going on. Stick with us all the way towards the end. And Tom, we're not wasting any time today. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, the market was pretty good last week, and I would say, we continued up, made new highs. The SPY crossed $500, which was huge to see on Friday, and overall, we saw a pretty good uptrend throughout the whole week. Now, Monday and Tuesday were a little bit flat, and it was a little flat to end the week last week, but man, going into this week, I'm really looking for this momentum to continue. And Mike, we have so much on the radar. Like you mentioned, we have the Super Bowl going on, we have earnings, we have inflation data, so I'd say the first big thing here that it needs to be addressed is the Super Bowl, right? And we've been looking at these stocks that follow sports betting like DraftKings, PENN with Penn Gaming for a little while. They do ESPN Bet. We've been looking at this for a little bit, Mike, and like you said, this is supposed to be one of the best Super Bowls ever with a record $23.1 billion that they're expecting it to hit. I mean, that is a lot of money, Mike, flowing through just sports betting. I would definitely think that as we start to go forward, that there'll be more and more money, obviously, as more states legalize. But man, this is going to be great for some of these stocks like DraftKings and even FanDuel, which hit the market a couple weeks ago. I'm sure that might surprise people. I couldn't believe it, Mike, but FanDuel is now officially on the market too. But I think I'm going to have to pick the Chiefs this time, Mike. I'm from Missouri. Mahomes is the new Tom Brady. We got to go with Chiefs. And hey, shout out to Taylor Swift too.
We'll have some fun, Tom, and I'll go with the 49ers. But yeah, this year's Super Bowl is expected to be a pretty big one in terms of sports betting. Last year, $16 billion was wagered on the Super Bowl, and this year it's popping all the way up to $23 billion that's expected. So going forward, keep a very close eye on stocks like DraftKings, which is ticker symbol DKNG. Also keep a close eye on FanDuel, like Tom mentioned, which is FLUT. And then there's a couple other big stocks out there like Caesars, which is CZR, and then MGM with BetMGM. But of course, with an event like this, it can definitely help out these companies quite a bit. So keep a close eye on them going forward. But as we talk about some of these sports betting stocks like DraftKings, we're also set for another exciting earnings week, Tom, as DraftKings is set to report on Thursday after close. So it looks like we have another big week ahead on the earnings side of things.
Yeah, we definitely are, and I love to see DraftKings reporting on Thursday, but there's just so many growth stocks that have been reporting the past couple weeks. Like, we've been seeing a lot of big stocks like Nvidia, Apple, and others at the beginning of the earnings season. Now that we're getting through it a little more, we're starting to see these more growth players come out like Shopify, Datadog, Airbnb, Upstart, Robinhood. On Wednesday, Barrick Gold, Kraft Heinz. I mean, ketchup, that's not a growth stock, but even Oxy, Cisco, Coinbase, Roku, The Trade Desk, like DoorDash even. I mean, there's a lot of growth stocks mixed in here this week. I would say my favorite overall is going to be Portland General Electric. I always got to pick a funny one, but to be real here, I think my favorite one for the week is going to be probably DraftKings and Coinbase on Thursday. And honestly, Mike, how could you not go with those two, right? It's like two huge stocks, and DraftKings, obviously, with the Super Bowl, you got to talk about them.
You said Portland General Electric, and I was like, what is the ticker symbol for that even? It looks like POR, but yeah, like you said, there's a lot of exciting growth stocks on the schedule for this week as well, so that should be pretty exciting. Keep a close eye on DraftKings this week on Thursday, obviously because of the big event this week. But, the market has been blasting higher, Tom. And like I said in the intro, the S&P 500 broke a crucial milestone, which is that $5,000 level, you can say. And looking at this chart right here, we can basically see how the stock market has reacted in the past after it has broken a major milestone. We could see what happened once it broke 4,000 and 3,000 and 2,000 and even 100, going way back. But one thing that I thought was interesting is that at least historically, when milestones are broken, a lot of times the stock market ends up moving up like a little bit in like the short-term future, but it looks like a lot of times it ends up having like a decent pullback as time goes by, as we could see through, you could say 4,000 and 3,000 and even 2,000, and even when you go way back, even at 100. So I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, and whenever I see the 12-month return, you see the 6-month return and the median move to the upside is like 7.7%. And then you see the 12-month return and it's only 4.7%. So there's definitely something that goes on where, like, in the short term after a big run like this, the market has historically done pretty well. But whenever you start to go out to that 12-month number, that's really weird to me to see that difference between the 7.7 and 4.7% difference. It's almost like the market's pulling back 3% in that case. So whenever I see this chart, Mike, I think it's very interesting. But the weirdest thing is just considering that we're at this major level, right? $5,000. It is a big spot. It needs to be addressed. It needs to be talked about. But at the same time, the market's just blasting up through it, right? I would have actually expected a little bit more chop around this level. But I guess with so much good momentum and with these earnings being somewhat positive lately, we're starting to see a lot of these stocks blast up and through here. And it makes sense. You go out to an NVIDIA daily chart. It's on fire, making new highs. Microsoft's really close to, it's just like every stock's making new highs right now. So I can see why we're blasting through 5,000, but I was kind of expecting 5,000 to hold up a little bit stronger as resistance, which so far it really hasn't.
Exactly. When that short-term momentum's there, it's really hard to stop it. It's strong and it's just... the bulls are in control right now. And as that chart showed, like in the short term, the market can definitely keep running higher. When that momentum's there, it's hard to stop it. But, as like a year goes by, it gets harder and harder to keep up that same level of intensity of buying pressure. So keep that in mind. But one other relevant thing worth noting is that out of the past 15 weeks for the S&P 500, the market has been green for 14 of them. We have not seen something this crazy since 1972. So that clearly shows that what we're seeing now is, it doesn't happen too often. And when this situation did happen all the way back in 1972, the stock market ended up just chopping around for like 7 months later. So it goes to show you that, big uptrends are good and all, but clearly at some point the endless euphoria will slow down, just a matter of when.
Now, Mike, this is a pretty insane stat. Green 15 out of 16 weeks here. I mean, that is nuts in 1972. And then we go to today, it's like, oh my gosh, I just can't believe, Mike, that we've been green 14 out of 15 weeks. Whenever I think about this uptrend and I go out to a daily chart, it looks great, but I just didn't realize the magnitude of this, that we were getting into something that has not happened since 1972. That is a very interesting stat, and I'm really glad that you found this chart here because, man, it shows that the market goes flat after a big run like this, and it makes a lot of sense because after a big run like this, what happens? People generally start to take profits a little bit. The market might slow up a little, but it looks like in the grand scheme of things, it's still continued higher over the long term, which is expected too. But, it's always interesting to see that chop in the short term. And I really hope the market doesn't get choppy here. But with how green we are, you can't not expect some red to come in, right? There's going to be some pullbacks mixed in at some point, but hopefully we don't chop around for 8 months like this.
Yeah, and you mentioned profit taking, Tom, and someone already beat you to it, and that is Mr. Jeffrey Bezos. So basically last week, Jeff Bezos dumped around $2 billion of his Amazon shares, and Jeff Bezos is not one to sell his shares often. The last time he sold off his Amazon shares was in November of 2021, and that was conveniently like the top of Amazon. So that goes to show you that when Mr. Jeffrey Bezos dumps the bag, he normally times it pretty well. And he's He's selling pretty decently right now. $2 billion definitely is no joke. And even looking at the size of his previous sales, this goes to show that, Jeff really wants to de-risk at least a little bit here. And to be honest, I can't really blame him considering Amazon stock increased by literally 113% over the past year.
Yeah, that's nuts. Like, you go to the 2023 low and you draw it up to now, it's like 113%. That is nuts. Now, I know that there's other stocks like Nvidia that are up more, and there's a couple others out there, but man, to see Amazon have that type of move is pretty damn good. And it's getting back towards its all-time highs and major resistance. So I don't really blame Jeffrey for selling it all either, but man, shout out to Jeff Bezos, guys. He seems to time the top pretty well with those last sales. I mean, in 2021, we're talking like he was within $10, $5 or so of the top with those sales. So whenever you go back through it, Mike, it's like he doesn't sell often, and when he does, it's generally at the higher points. So definitely be wary of Amazon stock. Now, obviously, just keep in mind, guys, this doesn't necessarily mean that Amazon stock is going to go down or anything like that, but whenever we see big CEOs like this start to sell shares, it can normally kind of kick off a string of selling, we'll say, and it's even happened with Tesla and Elon Musk and his brother selling too.
Yep, exactly. So keep a close eye on that. But this week will also be a little bit extra crazy because we have inflation data set to release as well. Just when you thought the week couldn't get any crazier, it did. And basically on Tuesday, 1 hour before the market opens, the inflation data will come out. Basically, the last inflation reading came in at 3.4%, and this one is expected to come in around like 3 to 3.1%. So that's a good sign. The lower the better, and it's always scary with these inflation reports because if they come in hot, that changes the sentiment quicker than almost anything else.
It does, and I'll say this, the last time, remember the consensus and the forecast were lower, and then the days heading into the actual reading, it started upticking a little bit. I'm going to keep my eyes on that just in case, but if inflation ends up coming in higher than 3.4%, that's going to really hurt the chances of a rate cut, obviously in March, and really for like May and June will be really what people look at there, I think, at this point. But man, it's going to be all about those rate cuts, Mike, right? Are we going to start to look at May and June for real, or are people still thinking March? I know that they're pricing in a pause in March now, but this data could change things. So let's see it. The inflation reading is always huge, and it's going to even affect the yields. Like, we go look at US 10Y, it started upticking a little bit recently, Mike, which is kind of worrying, and I'm surprised the market's holding up so strong with this continuing up. If it goes up too much more, we might start to see that market pull back a little bit.
Exactly. So keep a close eye on that. But Tom, let's get right into the fun stuff for today, which are some setups for tomorrow. A stock I'm watching pretty closely is Zoom, and this is one that's slowly rising from the dead, you can say, after it's just been falling nonstop since the end of 2020. But basically on Friday, it had a fantastic day. It showed some great price action. It had higher than average volume, and overall it's holding support well and showing some signs of life. So going into tomorrow, I'm going to have a close eye on Zoom. I would love to see a break above like the $66.30 area and just the same level of price action that we saw on Friday.
Yeah, that was some great movement to the upside there. And man, if it breaks that high of day, I could see it doing very, very well as well. Another stock that did pretty good last week was Coinbase. I was surprised it started coming back. I called it out last week, and I got to go with it again. It's sitting right at 144. So if it can break above like 144.10, I'll go ahead and look at calls for tomorrow. It didn't have the best day ever on Friday. The main move was in pre-market, but if we see that good momentum at open like we did on Thursday, then I think that we could see a good opportunity with this one, especially early on.
Sounds good. All right, another stock I'm watching pretty closely is Alibaba. These Chinese stocks are not going down without a fight. They kind of flopped on earnings, but on Friday, they were showing some decent price action. Again, the Chinese government is doing about everything they can to pump their markets higher, and it's hard to fight against a pump like that. So either way, I'm going to watch BABA closely to the upside, but at the end of the day, we want to see good price action with this one and just good momentum. If we do see that good bullish momentum, then it definitely has the chance to shoot higher, and that's where the opportunity will be. On the other hand, if that good momentum never comes in, then it just isn't worth trading at all.
Yeah, and Bob is a China stock. It's been rough lately, but it's down around that key $70 support. So I like this in the short term, Mike. I think it could be a pretty good play here. And my next one's actually a China stock too. I'm going with NIO. I know NIO hasn't been the best lately. You go out to a daily chart. It's been kind of like the other China stocks, except even a little bit worse. But on the daily, I'm seeing a good hold of the support right around 575. And whenever I see this, it started upticking on Friday, and I think we could end up hitting 610 or higher come Monday, Tuesday, and early on this week. So go ahead and watch NIO to the upside. It's been dipping a lot, but it is bouncing right on supports. And I think that with the China stock starting to move, NIO can start to uptick a little more. It's been a little flat, slow moving, but they usually have some pretty good volatile moves of over 2%. So I really want to see that volume come back into NIO here. It's just so beaten down, and it's right on support.
All right, sounds good. Well, it's now about that time for today's momentum plays, and with the first one, we have DraftKings to the upside.
How could you not? And shout out to them. Look at that daily chart, almost hitting $44 at the end of the week here. But go ahead and look for them to break 44 even. That's right around the high of day Friday, so watch that for calls.
All right, with the next one, we have another stock that's kind of stuck in the mud, which is PayPal, and it had a decent day on Friday as it popped up by like 5%, so we are watching this one to the upside.
Yeah, they fell on earnings, and they're kind of recovering up well, so if they can break 59.50 just above the high of day Friday, then go ahead and look at calls, and of course be careful around that $60-ish mark, but man, if it breaks there, well, I could see a move up to 62 or higher.
All right, and then with the last one, we have Tesla for both directions.
Good old Tessie, right? This one's actually in a pretty weird setup Friday, but if it breaks the high around 194, go ahead and look at calls to the upside. I could see that playing out pretty well. At the same time, if it starts to break under this trend line and gets back under 192, then I up puts.
All right, so we have the downside level for puts and we have the upside level for calls. That's Tesla. Don't forget about the upside levels with PayPal and DraftKings as well. Keep a close eye on these three momentum plays. We're looking for breaks of the levels Tom listed and then continuations in that direction. But it's also now about that time for today's big money $3.7 million trade of the day, and we are looking at ticker symbol AMLX. So this is basically a biopharmaceutical company. These stocks are super crazy. They move a ton based off of FDA approvals and outlooks and events and stuff like that. And on Friday, the big money trade was a $3.7 million call trade on AMLX. Basically, they are expecting AMLX to rise. The trade's a little bit advanced where it's a call debit spread, but more specifically, they bought the 20 strike call options and they shorted the 40 strike call options, both of which expire on June 21st of 2024. If you want to make your life nice and easy and you don't want to have to deal with an option spread, you can just buy the AMLX 20 strike call options for June 21st of 2024. You can always go with shares or anything like that. But a trade like this is high risk, high reward. Like I said, stocks like this are crazy. They move a lot based off of like drug approvals and, treatment developments and just things like that. But either way, whenever you see a big money trader putting $3.7 million into a trade like this, it definitely catches your eye.
It really does, and it's a pretty wild stock, too. Like, look at some of these uptrends that this stock has had since it came on the market. Like, oh my gosh, Mike, let's get the percentage on this. I know it's not like, well, actually, it might be close to NVIDIA. It's like 526, 525% up there to the high. So that's been some pretty good movement. Now, it's been pulling back pretty hard, but if the big money knows something here, Mike, this could be a fantastic trade to follow. It's one of those more of like set it and forget it ones for me, considering that it is a pharmaceutical stock and you just have to hope that they have some good news come out or, get that good volatility coming. But man, hopefully the big money knows something. That's $3.7 million, a lot bigger than the normal big money plays we see, which are normally closer to $1 million.
Exactly. So keep a close eye on this stock going forward. But with everything being said, we are really set for a crazy week in the market. Of course, the SPX is at the 5,000 level. We have more big earnings. The stock market is in the middle of one of its largest increases since 1972. We have Jeff Bezos dumping the bag. We have inflation data, and there's a whole lot of stuff going on in the market right now. It should be a very exciting week. If you guys are new to the channel, join the Stocked Up crew. Come subscribe and see our videos more often. We post all the time, and it's definitely, why not join, right? And we also want to give a giant shout out to today's member of the day, which is Jane, who's been a great member of the Stocked Up community. She's been improving so much. She's super positive, and she really shows up all the time, and she's just a great member all around. And we also want to give a special shout out to Jeanette, who's also been improving so much and is also a great member. So great job, ladies, and keep up all the great work.
Man, Jane, that is awesome. I'm so glad to see you growing as a trader. I know that you've came a long way since joining the community. So glad to have you in there, Jane. And yeah, let's go Jeanette too, right? I love the pictures too. She's always posting the cats, and it kind of gets me laughing throughout the day. So, thanks for brightening my day sometimes, Jane.
There we go. Well, guys, let's have a great week in the market. There's a whole lot on the schedule, so it should be an exciting one. Thanks for watching, and let's crush it.